Thanks for checking out my video. If you want to learn more from me, I have a lot of classes on Udemy. You can find the links to a lot of those in the description. Alright, so today I have some notes and I'm going to be going off of that. So if I can do the little Windows key and moving things to the right and the left, I basically wanted to talk about discerning between your ego and something higher. You can call it spirit, you can call it whatever deity you work with, what have you. But there is a clear difference that you will learn to differentiate over time. Cat always shows up right when I start making a video, doesn't she? Um, as you work more and more and more with magic and you further your understanding and being able to hear and discern the differences between like higher thoughts and more lower egoic thoughts. Sidestep and side note, this is why meditation is extremely important because we can learn to think about our thinking and observe our thinking rather than being ruled by our thinking, right? So let's talk about the ego in terms of magic, right? The ego is the part of you that clings to identity, what you think of as yourself, and even you can think of it as your wants and drives. Food, sleep, relations, stuff like that. Survival, control, and validation. It's not a bad thing. It's necessary for living in the world and understanding you versus someone else. My ego is different from your ego. I am name, title, da 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 da. You are name, title, da da da. Right? When you try to do magic from an ego perspective, it becomes willful manipulation rather than soulful creation. It becomes trying to force things to happen rather than co-creating them with the forces that you are calling up. And you could say that like magic is, the it's the act of changing reality in conformity with will, sure. But there's such a thing as like, you can get what you want through working with other people, and then you can get what you want through domineering and force. Sometimes it's like there's been several times, and I'm so bad at this, where I'm trying to fix something and I try to force it and I end up breaking it. You ever have that kind of thing happen? I know I can't exactly think of a specific example. I need a little bit more caffeine, and this is the best thing that I got right now. But I'm sure you can kind of think of something. Sometimes like going with the flow on stuff is way better than forcing it. Sometimes if you're trying to get someone to help you with something and you act a little too mean or forceful, then they're gonna shut down and they ain't gonna frickin' help you, right? You can get a what's the phrase that my grandma always says? You attract more with an ounce of honey than a gallon of vinegar. Something like that. I know I got the measurements wrong, but so ego says stuff like, you know, I want to prove that I'm powerful. I want to prove something about myself. Or I get this all the time with my magic for hire stuff. I want this person to love me, maybe even if they don't want to, or maybe even if they said no already. I had someone contact me about doing a magic for hire thing where they were literally like, this person doesn't have any interest in me, but I know I could be good for them, so could you do a love spell for me, please? No. um, I'll do this ritual so others will see how blank I am. There's a lot of people in spiritual circles and even on social media and whatever, where they will learn a skill, whether it's something like yoga or some other certification for something, because they want it for the clout. They want to be able to say that they are, certified in this and certified in that. And, that's all the ego stuff. But here on this channel and, in my personal life and my lady too, we know that working with spirit and doing spiritual stuff is less ego and it's more about what you're kind of called to do. Or even if there's been times when I've been interested in something and the door is shut. So even if I try to force it, it's not good. It's not going to work. That particular thing is not for me, and therefore I found the avenues that I am good at, rather than trying to force something that it's not open to me, right? Or even like I need this spell to work, or else I'll lose control. That's an interesting one. So or I'll lose my insert expletive here, where you're relying on magic to do things that you know you're basically putting all the dependence on magic rather than doing something else about it. You know, if you've ever known anyone where like if you don't do what they say, they're going to get mad. Well, they need to have better control of themselves, don't they? Because they can't control other people, right? And I know some people might come at me with like you can do black magic to manipulate people, or you can do magic to manipulate people, because magic really doesn't have a color. And so that's not true. You can get people to do what you want, but I find that to be coercive and negative, so I don't do that, and I really hope that we kind of stop doing that stuff. Um, right? So when it comes to actually doing magic from a non-egoic perspective, it's what's for the highest good. Is this particular magic that I'm wanting to do, is that going to benefit me and other people? If you're thinking about doing some magic and it's going to, slam someone down so you can go up, then that's from an egoist perspective. And, you got to go with I've talked to several different people about this kind of thing where like, you have a market of, let's say yoga teachers, right? And they say it's all competitive and whatnot. If you align yourself with your higher purpose and spirit and whatever, maybe it leads you into something bigger, better, right? But you go with the idea that like the universe is a universe of abundance and a universe of plenty, and therefore, you will find your tribe, you will find your clients and stuff like that, rather than like there's this other person that is in the same kind of circles that I am, and I need to stomp on them and push them down because I want to take up their space. That's selfish. Don't do it. It's egoic. Don't do it. Right? If you're better, prove you're better by actually going out there and doing it, and then having everyone else gravitate to you because you do that job better than someone else does. Look at the way that competition works in business, right? Let's not do any shady practices and stuff. So, and then how can doing this spell improve my soul, improve my overall energetics, right? Is this magic going to help you grow in some way? If you're doing something to overcome a fear or whatever, or you know, different things like that. If you're doing a spell to get a job, right? How is that going to help you grow? Sure, it's going to give you mundane stuff like money and whatever, but is that going to improve you as a person? The majority of the magic that I've done over the last 20 years, has all been about, and I've done like little things about like getting a job opportunity and different stuff like that. But it's been about improving myself. That's why I love path workings. That's why I like working with archetypes and different spirits and deities and whatnot that will improve me rather than just me asking for handouts. The whole cookie jar thing that I've talked about before, where I don't want a spirit to give me a cookie, to reach on top of the fridge and give me where the cookie jar is and grab me a cookie. I want to learn how to get onto the top of the fridge and grab a cookie for myself. I want to have a spirit help me to learn how to get on top of the fridge and grab the cookie. Let me know if you like my analogies, by the way, because I always try to cook them up so it makes sense, so it translates from in here, out here, and into your brain too. So, and then, I might skip that little bullet there. Kind of talked about it anyway. So ego grasps for stuff, and your higher self, higher calling spirit, whatever you want to call it, it listens to things and it works with things. And ego wants power, but spirit, higher self, whatnot, seeks wholeness. And you might say, well, I'm a whole person right now, but you can expand that wholeness to grow as a person. I was whole when I was 1.5 and I was wicked tiny with a cyst in my head, but I'm a lot taller now and I'm whole because I've expanded, I've grown, right? Your spirit can do the same thing. Your opportunities can do the same thing. Stuff like that. Man, this, I might make multiple videos on this because I'm already almost at 10 minutes. So, here's some signs you might be acting from ego. So if there's urgency or desperation to the spell that you want to do, like now, I got to do this now. And of course, there are times when like something happens where you want to do something right now. Like if there's an urgent situation where you might want to call on some spirits or do some magic for like helping with some negative feelings that are coming up as part of like shadow work and stuff. And if you're doing shadow work, hopefully that's not from an egoic perspective, because then if you're doing shadow work from an egoic perspective, you're going to be slamming everything outside of you rather than what's actually in you. So that's a little sidebar. And then feeling personally offended if your working doesn't work, right? So if your magic doesn't work out, what do you blame it on? So do you blame it on the efforts of somebody else that, oh, my magic wasn't strong enough, or, oh, they must have something around them that protects them from my stuff because I know I'm powerful and whatnot? See, the ego's already talking there. Or you might get mad and throw magic out altogether. Or you might get mad at the spirits that you called on helping you. Well, I wouldn't do that. Using magic to get revenge or to prove your worth, So it's the whole somebody slaps you, you slap them back. Well, turn the other cheek is a much better thing. Rather than being vengeful, rise above that other person and improve yourself so you can be better than them, rather than just lashing out, either physically, energetically, magically, stuff like that. And when it comes to proving your worth, you got to prove your worth to yourself first before proving it to someone outside of you, right? And then thinking your spiritual path makes you superior to others. This is kind of a big one because when we get into magic and spiritual work, there are some people that, they carry what they can do and who they are, and it becomes, your spiritual path and like who you are. Like, I practice the Andean shamanism, so therefore you can call me a Paco. And I've worked with the gate walking and the Simon Necronomicon, where I understand it backwards, forwards, and blah, 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 which is why I wrote a book on it and why I have classes on it and I mentor on it along with a bunch of other magic. Check the link tree down below for more of that stuff, even the magic for hire and all that stuff. There you go. There's my shameless plug. I got it on my system. Where you... what was the point I was on? Yeah, where the spiritual path makes you feel superior to others. Now, I know I have a bunch of knowledge and stuff. It's why this channel is full of tons and tons of videos, right? There's plenty of people that know way more than I do. I have people that I work with as far as the Paco stuff. They know more than I do. I know that I am a perpetual learner, and all these videos are a discussion. I share the stuff that I know, and maybe you're here because you don't know the things that I know. But maybe there's things that you know that I don't know. So I'm always open to people that send me emails and questions and comments and whatnot. So drop one down there. Email in the description, where I am always open to magic being different than I thought it was. And I'm constantly learning more and more and more. If you ever sit there and call yourself an expert in something, that's your ego. Because nobody is truly an expert. There is not a doctorate or a postdoc level that you can reach where you're going to know everything in a particular subject area. And no matter how many people will tout things like, I went through this program and I'm a certified blah, 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 and I'm a third level this and blah, blah. The second they start throwing out around titles like that, that kind of makes them egoic. Especially if they walk the walk and talk the talk. And have you ever talked to somebody about some spiritual subjects where they seem holier than thou and they know more than they do and they stand on like a practical podium when they're talking, or they put themselves on a pedestal? That's the ego stuff. And then believing you're beyond needing guidance, teachers, or correction. Okay, I already talked about that part. And then a fixation on aesthetic perfection or being seen as powerful rather than deeply effective. So this is more of the bells and whistles and the outside stuff in a way. So like, if your magic, you can kind of perform magic and then have an egoic look on the world where you're not seeing the forest for the trees with your results. You might even get obsessive about, oh, I got to go back to the drawing board and do it again because now this other element came in and screwed my stuff up, but I know what to do about that. You say that in a much more calm way about having to go back to the drawing board. That's one thing, but this is all about, I would argue that a lot of the ego stuff is the outward appearance jazz, right? Like with the social media stuff nowadays, you go over Instagram with like any kind of spiritual kind of thing. I don't care if it's Reiki or yoga or shamanism or witchcraft or whatever. You get all these people that like they do stuff to make themselves look like the big boss, right? Now, there's plenty of people out there where their social media jazz makes them look wonderful, right? But the stuff that they teach could just be surface level. Or have you ever taken a class from someone where everything looked really good and then you kind of didn't learn anything? So it's like you can have a shiny car. It looks wonderful. You can have a friggin' shiny Jaguar that has no scratches on it and whatever. Maybe you just got it detailed and whatnot. But something is wrong in the engine and won't go anywhere. That kind of thing. Your transmission dropped out. When my last car died, it looked great. I mean, except for a couple of scratches or whatever. And I hated the fact that it had leather. But would it go anywhere? No. So appearances and all that stuff ain't everything. That's why my altar is super simple. You might see some people on social media or whatever where their altars are wicked highly decorated, or they're really good at putting on a scene when they're demonstrating different things that they're doing, and they're telling a story with it. But hey, we read stories because they're fiction. We enjoy fiction. But when it comes to doing magic, we want it to be real. So you do want to really keep an eye out for the people that are egoic in their practices, and you don't want to also become egoic yourself. This has been a long one. Nice. Let me know what you think about this stuff. Drop any comments that you have down there, and definitely ask me any questions. Give me suggestions for any other further videos that you would like me to make. And I will see you guys next time before this goes over 20 minutes. Good hunting.